finding your way into your space, I invite you to start sitting today, adding in whatever support underneath you need to get really comfy and settled here. Checking in with your body as it is today. There might be points of tightness or tension or things that have happened during your week that you're feeling in your body. Just noticing, greeting those, allowing them to be there. Finding a way to just mentally settle in, perhaps noticing those points of contact down through the hips, the legs, the feet. Perhaps noticing the way the hands rest on the legs or in your lap. Maybe feeling the shoulders soften away from the ears, the jaw, just gently release a tiny smidge. And continuing this week with this idea of building awareness from the bottom up. Last week, we really honed in on sort of the toes to the hips, through the legs, the feet, and the joints in between. Today, we'll bring our focus a little higher, working from the hips up to the shoulders. But let's check in with this base first, because we keep building on what we focused on previously. So can we feel a sense of support through the sitting bones, the bottom, the legs? We feel this really strong, solid base, and just acknowledge the things that our legs, our hips, our feet have enabled us to do already today, from the big things to the little things. And if we can, finding a sense of gratitude for this physical body as it is right here, right now. And I invite you to bring your awareness a little further up the body. And a nice way to start to tune in here is by noticing the breath. Because we often get this lovely movement through the torso with each breath. Can we feel our inhales really drawing the breath in, expanding the body? You might feel it in the belly, in the side of the ribs, in the lower back. You might even bring some part of your hands to the belly or around the sides or the back. You can feel into that expansion. And then if we can, bringing our focus further within. So this tuning in of the breath kind of helps us become aware of the way the lungs, the diaphragm, the belly, the way they work together. Perhaps also just noticing or bringing our awareness to some of the other vital organs in this space. Our heart and our ribs, in our chest. This amazingly complex center of the body. And helps support us quite literally through our day. Just taking a few breaths into that awareness here. And when you're ready, we can find a little movement here. We can bring our left hand down towards the floor, reaching up and over with the right. Then returning gently to center, we can come over to the other side. Inhale to reach over, create space down the left-hand side of the body. And just working back and forth with your breath, particularly if you haven't moved a lot already today, just taking it gently, feeling into these first big movements through the shoulders and the arms. And particularly today, can we bring our focus a little further down through the torso? So can we feel the way the outer edge of that side bend gets perhaps a little more stretch, a little more space in between the ribs. You might feel the way the other side, the underside, kind of squeezes and engages together. And then let's come up and over. The next time we touch down with the left, we can stay for a few breaths, really reaching the right fingertips long and anchoring down through this right hip. So as the hip draws down and we lift and reach away, can we feel a nice amount of stretch? If it's a lot for the shoulder, you could always bend the elbow and cup the hand just around the bottom back part of the head. Either place, finding a place that fits for your gaze. It feels like a really nice place to stay for a couple of breaths here. And then from here, let's bring a little bit of engagement. So with our inhale, we're reaching the fingertips. With our exhale, let's make a fist with this top hand and pull the elbow back towards the side of the ribs. So inhale, extend, expand. Exhale, drawing in. Once we settle into the movement, let's see what we can notice down this outer side of the side bend. So even when we're at this full stretch, can we feel these muscles engage and pull this arm back? Really building strength at that kind of end range or in that stretch position, as well as when it's shorter and more contracted. Let's take 2 more, smooth and steady with your breath. Beautiful. The next time we pull back, we're just going to pause at the shoulder. And then we'll come into some twisting movements from here. Now, if you're all the way over and it feels like too much for the twist, feel free to come a little more upright. We're going to bring this right hand around to the left. And then inhale, spiraling open, reaching over away behind the opposite shoulder. So you can inhale, cross over the body, twisting down. And inhale, peeling open and away. As you settle in here, you might notice that as we reach around, the shoulder blade wraps away from the spine. And as we pull that arm up and open, the shoulder blade kind of squeezes back to the center of the upper back. Just taking 2 more here. It's a lot for this moving arm. We've been here a little while. So can we breathe still comfortably here? Or do we need to make it smaller or take a pause for a breath? And then the next time we cross back over, let's just gently bring ourselves back up to center. If you can, finding a position that's comfortable to rest for a few moments and see perhaps if you can tune into anything through the shoulders, the upper chest, the upper back, through the middle of the torso, through the hips, just noticing anything that feels perhaps a little different side to side. And then perhaps before we change sides, you might even like to creep the right fingertips away to the right a little and just tilting the left ear towards the left shoulder. Finding just that gentle length, gentle pull down through the right side of the neck. You could adjust the angle of the head. Just feel a nice release there before we change sides. Well, let's gently walk those fingertips back in, come upright. If you want to take a little roll, a little fluid movement here before the other side, feel free. And then we'll start that side bend on the other side. So we'll bring the right hand down this time, reaching up and over for that longer hold. And again, how can we settle in here, particularly from this outer hip? Can we really anchor down firmly there? So it's not about us tipping over. We're pulling the base of the side of the body down so we can get this lovely length. We've got that option to support the head if that feels better for you here. And with our breath, can we bring our focus down through the side of the ribs, the waist, the hips? Perhaps taking 1 more full breath here. And then if and when you feel ready with our exhale, we can bring that grab and pull of the elbow down towards the ribs and then releasing along with the inhale. Inhale to create space, exhale, accessing that strength of the side of the body. Now we can adjust in any way. We can make it bigger or smaller. You can imagine that you're pulling something quite heavy with that hand and really engage the muscles there. If that feels like too much, we can ease away a lot. Imagine it's a little lighter. There's not quite as much intensity there. Finding that movement and breath here, helping create space and strength in the outer edge of the body. And then that next pull back to the shoulder, let's pause here. We can readjust our side bend if we need to. And then we can come into that twist, that crossing over the body. We don't have to touch this crossed hand by any means. You could touch the knee or whatever works for you. And then opening away across that outside shoulder. Perhaps noticing the way the heart moves here in these twisting movements, spiraling a little towards the floor and then spiraling out and up a little towards the ceiling, just as far as it feels good for you. Maybe you want to feel around that heart space. As we cross the arm over, there's a bit of a squeeze there. And then as we reach away behind, there's a bit of a stretch, bit of space. Let's go 1 or 2 more times through. Beautiful work. Let's bring that hand back down and support ourselves upright. And then finding that length through the neck. So we can just creep those left fingertips away a little as we let the right ear soften towards the right shoulder. Changing the angle of the gaze if you need to get into a really nice place just to breathe for a few moments. And then let's gently release back up and we'll make our way over to hands and knees. Finding our tabletop. Spreading the fingers wide, let's anchor firmly through the hands, anchor firmly through the lower legs. And as we come into our cat and cow today, I invite you to start this movement from the tailbone and then sort of work it up through the rest of the spine. So you can start whenever you're ready, but as we inhale, we can tuck the tailbone under and start to peel that bend up to the top of the spine. Then with our exhale, we can tilt the tailbone up and slowly release the spine down. So taking that back and forth with your own breath. And depending on how you're feeling in your spine today, it might feel like you can really articulate that movement up through the spine, or it might feel like big chunks of the spine are moving kind of in one stuck unit and it's quite hard to get that flowing feeling. And all of that's okay. It's just about bringing a little awareness, seeing what it feels like to try and sort of separate out that movement. And if it's painful in any way or you're finding not for you today, you can come to your regular cat and cow for sure, arching up and down with your breath. Let's take one more flow through, smooth and steady with the breath. And then coming back to a neutral spine, let's bring the spine long and we'll take the left foot back from where it is, tucking the toes under. You could push back a little or a lot to feel a nice amount of stretch down the back of the leg. Can we push the floor away here so the chest kind of lifts up away from the floor, the shoulders stabilize? And then from here, we can come to our gate pose. So that left foot spinning, flat toes pointing away to the side. The right foot can wheel away behind us a little, pressing into the right hand to take that top arm up tall, some softness in that supporting elbow. Taking your gaze wherever you'd like it to be, perhaps down for a little more support or up for a little more challenge for the balance. And then from here, can we find some side length? So we could maybe bring that top arm over the ear, just to bring that length through the center of the body here, through the side body. Maybe you want to keep that back foot down, or maybe you want to lift here, really imagining we're stamping on a wall at the base of our mat or the base of our space to really push off and launch up through the side of the body. Either way, we should get a really nice side stretch here. Can we find that comfortable place to be for one more full breath? And then let's reach over and down, wheeling ourselves back to hands and knees. You might take a few cat and cows or find your child's pose for a few breaths. Just finding a way to release and settle for a few moments. If you're needing that respite for the wrists, settling the hips back towards child's pose can be really helpful. Or if you're feeling a little more stiff in the hips in the back, that movement may be for you. And then when you're ready, we can bring ourselves up to take that on the other side, this time sending the right foot back, toes tucked, checking in first of all with that length in the back of the leg, really stabilizing through the rest of the body. And then making that transition, the right toes to spin flat out to the side, left foot can ease away behind us, pressing into the left hand and taking it up high. Beautiful. Can you notice before we go into that side length here, a difference between the underside of the body and the top? Chances are this underside will feel a little more engaged, a little more contracted, and the top side will feel a little more stretched and spacious. And then if you'd like to add those extra elements to get more side stretch, you can. So you can reach long over the ear here. You could bring that foot off the floor at the back if that works for you, finding that best option for today on this side right now. And tuning into the breath wherever you end up. And we take one more in breath here. And then out breath, spiraling down. Finding our way back to hands and knees. And before we settle into our more traditional child's pose, we've got an option to have a play with extended child's pose. So for this one, we can bring the knees further apart than the hips, just a little wider, big toes to touch. And instead of the hips settling back, we can leave them up over the knees. We've got the hips stacked over the knees as we walk the hands away. If it suits for you to bring the head down, you can. If you find you'd like to bring a cushion pillow underneath your chest, you definitely could. Then from here, we've got the hands and maybe the forehead anchoring into the floor. And then the hips shifting back just an inch or two to really sort of pull a gentle passive length through the spine. So ideally, once we're here, we're able to really let go of any need to hold or engage. And we want it to feel like a beautiful place to be. So if you feel for you, that means you need to add some support somewhere. You can definitely add in a pillow, a folded blanket underneath the chest, or sort of vertically along the front of the body, running up the belly, the chest. You could add a support that way too. A bolster is a lovely option here if you happen to have one at home. And then can we breathe space and length up through the spine? Settling here for 2 or 3 more breaths. If it's still a comfortable place to be, you could release back to our more traditional child's pose anytime you're ready. And then if you haven't already, let's gently walk or slide the hands back, bringing the hips down towards the heels. Again, if you need any extra supports, add them in as you go. And if it still works to have the arms long, let's find a little side length here. So we can walk both hands off the left or over to the left as far as you need to feel a stretch down the right-hand side of the body. Chances are you won't have to walk those hands very far at all to feel a really nice amount of length through the side there. As we're here, as we're a little more passive, a little more supported here, when we breathe, can we feel the difference between perhaps the right side of the ribs and the lungs and the left? Can we feel perhaps each breath in really sort of stretching, expanding the muscles around the ribs? And then let's gently walk ourselves back through center and over to the right. Again, just however far you need to go to feel that length down the opposite side. Gauging it on how it feels from the inside out rather than how far we think we should walk. And then can we come back to the breath here, helping to create awareness, create space through the torso. And it's coming back to center. Gently, we can support ourselves up to hands and knees, bringing the knees back in underneath the hips. And let's find our first downward dog here. As you feel ready, we can tuck the toes, pressing the hips high, really engaging through the hands to create this really solid base up through the arms, the shoulders. And then feeling into this length here from the crown of the head to the tailbone. Can we imagine we're pushing the tailbone sort of away to the top of the wall behind us, really supporting that natural length in the spine. Check in that we're not sort of arching our back one way or the other.
And then extending that length from the sitting bones down to the heels with as much bend in the knees as you need. Even with that bend, can we feel the length? Can we engage through the balls of the feet? If and when you're ready, we can start that transition back to our standing forward fold. As we come back, the feet coming flat, the ribs, the belly engaging into the legs. Maybe the fingertips come to the floor. Maybe they come to the legs somewhere, the front or the back. And if it feels okay for you balance-wise and blood pressure-wise, we can let the top of the head relax down towards the earth. Using gravity to help lengthen through the spine. And you might want to contrast that length in the back of the body with sort of a squeeze, a contraction, that contact in the front of the body. And I quite like here, if it's an option for you, you might want to try it, bringing the hands around to the back of the calves. It's almost like we've got this hug, this embrace of the legs that helps the shoulder blades wrap away from each other, finding a little space there. And then when you're ready, we can come up to stand. And let's roll today. So softness in the knees, driving through the feet, tucking the tailbone. Maybe the arms hang heavy or maybe they walk up the body. But either way, taking a slow, steady release up to stand, taking your time. Letting ourselves settle upright again and perhaps noticing any shifts that you feel. Sometimes there's a coolness or a whooshing sense in the body. If there's any of those sensations, just notice them as they arrive. And then let's find ourselves in our mountain pose if you're not there already. Feet about hip width apart at the front of our space, plenty of room behind us here. As we focused on last week, can we find that contact through the feet, really engaging down into the earth, a bit of a lifting in the inner arches, up through the knees, the thighs. And then can we transfer that awareness into this midsection of the body, a tuck of the tailbone a little, a bit of engagement in the lower belly, height up through the spine, and then allowing the shoulders to soften and lengthen away. We take a couple of smooth, steady breaths here. Beautiful. And for today, let's explore a little bit of a twist in our side reach. So let's reach the arms up overhead. Today, let's see if we can face the palms in towards each other, about shoulder width apart. I'm going to play with a little twisting motion. So let's keep the spine neutral today, rather than that slight back bend we sometimes extend into. See if we can focus on the crown of the coming up tall. We're aiming to keep the hips square on and bring this twist from the belly upwards. As we reach one arm back with the thumb facing up, just wheeling it around behind, letting the palm rotate as it needs to, and then coming back up overhead. Once you arrive, we can take the other arm back, just feeling the way the chest, the heart opens slightly away to the side while the hips stay square. And taking a few rounds, breathing smoothly and steadily throughout. And a couple of options here, if it's feeling like a lot, keeping the other arm suspended above your head, you could definitely do this either with the arms out in front or with them down. And that same process, taking that spiral through, feeling the way the chest, the shoulder blades, the ribs, the muscles through the torso all work together to give us this rotating movement, almost like a slow, gentle backstroke here. We're just taking one more on each side, smooth and steady. Beautiful. Then when you're ready, if you haven't already, let's bring both arms overhead. And then we can fold, bending the knees, bringing belly to thighs as we fold, finding that best place for the hands, that softness in the knees. Feeling into that contact of the belly and the legs here. And then let's, from here, looking down at the feet, stepping the right foot straight back from where it is, bringing that right knee down. And let's settle into our low lunge here. Same process as always. Can we anchor firmly? You're welcome to stay with that contact on the floor or come up onto the thigh. Can we engage down through both feet here?
And for today, let's see if we can explore almost like a cat and cow movement here. So we can sweep both hands around forwards, the backs of the hands come into contact as we kind of round and cat arch our way forwards. And then drawing the palms back next to the shoulders as we arch the chest and belly forwards a little. So playing with that movement, sweeping around and opening up. If you're down on the floor, it might be a little harder to find, but you can definitely still have a go at that arching up of the spine and then finding a little length in the front. Even though the leg tends to be in the way, we can still find some of that arching either way. It may be a little easier if you have blocks or something solid to rest your hands on here. Just taking a few more rounds. Can we really anchor into the legs and the hips here? Let them be our solid supportive base. And then from that base, can we explore this release, this movement, this flow through the midsection of the body? The arms are kind of incidental here. They're just helping us create this movement. Let's take one more round. And we'll bring hands down and let's make our way back to plank. Whether you want to lift the back knee and shoot that leg through the middle, or you want to step it around the side. Either way, let's find our way to plank with the knees down, shoulders stacked over the wrists, softness in the elbows as we really push the floor away. Let's see if we can engage here, smooth and steady with the breath. And then from here, we're going to find our way into some side plank options. So what we can do is bring our hips back a little, shuffle the knees over to the right. I'm going to spin and bring our hips down onto the left side. Actually, it doesn't really matter which side. You choose whichever side makes sense in your space because we'll come to the other side in a moment. So we're going to come down onto our hips. We've got our knees bent and stacked on top of each other. Elbow under the shoulder and forearm facing straight out in front. Really firm and anchored and supported here. And we're going to see if we can come into a little bit of a side cat and cow. You can always bring your hands down in front of you for support. But if it works, I invite you to at least start with the hand on the hip to give us this awareness. So we're going to try and keep this pressure through the shoulder, through the forearm, the whole way through to really support this shoulder joint. But then see if we can lengthen this underside of the body down towards the floor. So it's a little bit of a tilt of the hips here. You might feel a squeeze in this top side of the body. Then let's try the opposite. We push and lift the underside of the body away from the floor, arching these lowest ribs. Beautiful. It's even can feel nice actually to bring this top arm wrap around the bottom rib because it can really help us feel the way we lift and push away from the floor and then we lower down towards the floor, still keeping this strength and stability in the shoulder. Having a couple of goes here. If this is something that just feels really comfortable, really easy for you and you're looking for more challenge, you want to add another strength component. As we arch up away from the floor, you could add a hip lift and lift the hips up off the floor with that lift, bringing them down and then lengthening the underside. Completely up to you if that's sort of a feasible, manageable option for you. Myself, I definitely prefer to leave that hip anchored and feel into that movement. Nice one. We'll just take one more through that movement. Lovely. And then we'll make our way over to the other side. So we can come down through our belly first. If you want to bend both knees and take a little sway side to side, you can. When you're ready, we'll set up on the other arm. I'm just going to spin it around so I can see you all. Let's set up again, the elbow under the shoulder, forearm really anchoring down firmly to help the shoulder sort of area engage. Hips stacked here. Bringing that hand maybe onto the hip, maybe wrapped around those lowest ribs, maybe down in front for balance. And then we can find that movement. We can tilt the hip down, lengthen through the underside, but keeping the shoulder engaged. And then lift those ribs up and away. Just seeing what you can notice here. Particularly if you've got that hand wrapped, you can probably feel some of the muscle engagement in different parts of the ribs, the belly. And you remember to breathe here. And again, if you're looking for more, you could definitely take that hip lift with the arch up and away. lowering back down to the floor before lengthening out. Let's take one more on this side here. And releasing. And from here, we'll find our way to downward facing dog. So coming to hands and knees. And then we can tuck the toes, taking the hips high. Can we feel the length in the spine here? Can we feel the lowest ribs in line with the rest of the body as we really press the hands away? Just taking a couple of breaths here. You can always find options in tabletop or releasing to child's pose from our downward dog. Let's take one more breath, wherever is the best fit for now. And bending the knees, looking forwards, let's step the right foot up in between the hands, or bring the left knee down first and then shuffle it along. Setting up for our low lunge here. Fingertips perhaps down on the floor or coming up to the legs. Strong and stable. How much can we anchor through the front foot, through the back lower leg? And then when you're ready, perhaps finding that cat and cow type movement again, that reaching around away, creating that space between the shoulder blades as we pull back over the space in the heart. Find that steady flow with your breath and seeing how steady we can stay through the hips, the legs, the feet. As before, that option of staying connected through the hands and just finding perhaps that smaller range of motion. You may find you can press more into the floor if you arch up, but as you arch down, you lift more to the fingertips. Take about 2 or 3 more times through, smooth and steady with the breath. Beautiful. Let's release, bringing hands down. We can tuck back toes and make our way up to our standing forward fold. Perhaps finding one of those options as before, fingertips to the floor, to the front of the legs, or wrapping around the back of the legs. Then can we find that release through the spine, letting the head hang heavily, the gaze away through the legs behind us. Finding a smooth, steady breath here. And then let's come up to stand. That slow tuck and release as we roll. Arms heavy, all walking up the body. As we arrive, perhaps a roll of the shoulders here, space. From the shoulders down through the rib cage, through the belly to the hips. Just taking a moment perhaps to appreciate the way our body carried us through that movement. The different muscles that engage and work together. The heart, the lungs, all our other vital organs supporting us here without us even having to be aware of it. We find our smooth, steady breath for 2 or 3 more breaths here. And then when you're ready, you could find a squeeze and stretch of the fingers. You could grab a drink, just taking a moment. And we'll come back to the front of our space. We'll find a standing series here this morning. Alrighty. So we're going to start with a knee lift. And we're going to start on the one side. So we'll anchor through the left leg with a bend in the left knee. Taking the left, I'm just trying to think which way I just said that. I think we'll anchor, let's anchor through the right leg, sorry. Let's take the left knee forwards. Coming to a knee lift and then coming back down again. So we're going to bring that knee up. Any amount you're bringing the knee up, might step the toes forwards and keep them connected and then step back. Or you could bring the knee up. And with this one, it's really up to you whether you keep all of your weight in that standing leg and that moving leg just taps down, or whether you want to kind of step back onto that left foot and release the pressure a little on the right before coming up again. You can take it at your own pace, find the version that works for you. And then from here, we're going to aim for a cross body connection. So we're going to use our right hand. You might start with the right hand lifting. Then as that knee comes forwards, we make contact between the hand and the knee or the leg. If the toes are staying in contact with the floor, you might bring it onto the thigh and then reach them away again. So we bring them across the body into contact with one another and then out. And if it works for you, if you want to play around and get a bit playful and creative, you could take them out in different directions and then bring them back together. Taking a few more rounds here. And as you make that connection between the hand and the leg, can we squeeze them into each other a little and see if we can feel kind of an engagement, the way that switches on parts of the torso here. You might feel a little more around the outer hip. You might feel it through the side of the body, up through the center. Beautiful. All right, let's take one more time through. And then we're actually going to swap over to the other side. There's quite a lot for that standing leg. So let's release that left leg. Before we change sides, have a pedal, have a shake, a roll, whatever you feel like is helpful for you. Lovely. And then let's ground through the left foot this time, starting with those knee lifts on the right side and bringing them down again, whatever degree, however far works for you today. And then when you're ready, adding in that cross body, that left hand into contact with the knee, the leg. And again, making it your own. So if you want to touch down with the right leg, releasing some of that pressure from the left, you can. Or if you want to keep it lifted, you can. If you want to play out in some diagonal directions or more forwards and backwards, you could take that leg away behind as well. Lots of different options to play with. We'll take a couple more here again, that contact being key. What happens when we push the hand and the leg into each other? How does it engage? Beautiful. Let's take one more big squeeze in together. And then letting it go. And we're going to come back to that first side. So after our little jiggle, a little reset, let's plant through the right foot again. This time we'll find a hold here. So stepping the left toes forwards, whether they touch or lift. Then taking the opposite hand, and we could wrap the hand around the front of the knee if you can reach comfortably. If it's lower down, crossing the hand over to the outside of the thigh works just as well. And then can we start to turn the chest away to the left a little and maybe reach that left hand away behind. Again, this reaching of the arm is really just to get that sensation in through the chest, that engagement through the upper back, height through the spine here to help with our twist. Can we breathe here? Beautiful. One more smooth, steady breath. Then let's release that leg from wherever it was and see if we can step it all the way through and back for a high lunge. So taking it back as you arrive, you might want to press long and bend a few times with that front leg. It can really help sometimes release any pressure through the ankle, through the foot. And then let's take ourselves straight into our warrior two. So this back foot is going to spin flat, the chest, the belly open out to the left, checking in with this right knee that stays over the ankle. And when you feel stable, strong, settled, we can expand out wide through the arms. Perhaps taking the gaze over these right fingertips, finding that gentle, strong focus here. Smooth and steady. And then from here, we can find our bow pull. So we can sweep this left arm around to the right fingertips and then draw it back up the arm across the chest and away behind. So we've got this sweeping around, pulling back. It can be really nice sometimes to watch that moving hand as a bit of a visual focus. Can we stay strong and stable through the legs, through the feet? Just check as you next sweep around, is that right knee staying anchored over the ankle or is it kicking into the left a little? We want it nice and stable right over the ankle. Let's take one more cycle through. The next time you expand out wide, let's take an Exalted Warrior, turning that front palm up, reaching the right arm up high, that left hand maybe sliding down the leg or maybe bending in against the hip, depending on what fits better for you. And like we did with our side bends, can we anchor into this right hip so we can lift and reach, really feeling that stretch up through the waist, through the ribs here. Smooth and steady with the breath. And then let's inhale, bringing ourselves back out wide, and then finding our side angle. So bending the right elbow, it could come palm to the leg or forearm to the leg, left arm high. And then when you're ready, let's just find some gentle movement for this left shoulder. However feels good for you. You could do big circles in one direction or the other. You could make them smaller and lead with the elbow. If that movement isn't for you, you could bring the hand to the hip for sure. Just taking your time. And that strong base in our side angle, can we find some big sweeping movement here? And then let's bring that arm down, pressing off the front leg, strong through the front foot. Let's rotate the back heel up and we'll step back to the front of the mat. As we arrive, having a pedal or a roll, finding that release here. And then we'll take that longer hold on the other side. So we're going to anchor into the left foot this time and find that hold with the right, whether the toes touch and that left arm comes across to the outer leg, or whether you can lift the knee enough to wrap the hand around the front of the knee. Maybe you can rotate the chest and send that right hand away behind with the thumb facing up. Tall through the spine here. Letting that smooth, steady breath. One more breath wherever you are. And then we can release and step that right leg all the way through behind. Touching it down, we can squiggle it further back if we need, and then spinning the foot around flat for our warrior two. So our left knee is over the left ankle, pointing out to the side. That right foot's wherever it needs to be for the hips to be comfortable. The chest and the hips open away to the right. Not completely, they don't have to be all the way around. That's just the direction we're moving. And expanding as you feel ready into your warrior two. Perhaps gaze over those left fingertips for that soft focus. Can we feel height through the torso here? Can we feel the shoulders stacked over the hips, really long and neutral in the spine? Keeping as much of that length as we can as we start this bow pull, reaching that back arm all the way around to the front, pulling it back across the chest, away behind. Finding that rhythm with your breath. Beautiful. From this strong, stable base, can you find that sense of flow, of lightness in the movement and the breath? One more time, let's expand out wide. Once you arrive, we can turn that front palm up, reaching it up towards the ceiling, finding our Exalted Warrior, that back arm sliding or pressing in against the hip. And again, can we soften through the left hip, really anchoring here so we can lift and reach through that left side of the body. Taking one more breath wherever you are. Then inhale, let's bring ourselves out wide and find our side angle, left hand or forearm to the thigh, right hand reaching for the ceiling, the chest spiraling open. And then if you'd like to, some circular movement here, finding just a bit of movement through the shoulder. Maybe noticing in whatever way you've chosen to move the arm, what happens through the chest, what happens through the front and the back of the shoulder blade. You could change directions if you want to for these last couple of cycles through. And then from here, pressing ourselves back upright, stepping that back foot around and forwards. And then from here, let's take perhaps a standing spin, the feet out a little wider, that floppiness through the arms. See if we can let go of any engagement from the shoulders down to the fingertips. And as you spin, it might be nice to pick up this outside heel just to get a bit of rotation through the lower back and the pelvis as well. You might notice the faster you spin, the higher the arms kind of flop into your body. Perhaps noticing the air whoosh through your hands, your arms, whatever exposed skin you've got. And then starting to slow down that movement, maybe noticing the way the arms start to come lower down into the body. A little bit of that massaging, pummeling around the outer hips eventually. And coming back to center. Alrighty, let's take one more standing pose. Let's explore eagle pose together before we head down. Starting with a version of chair pose, feet hip width apart, sitting the bottom back. Let's check in with what happens through the torso in our chair first, because we want that to be really similar to what happens once we come into eagle. So we've got the tailbone lengthening and the lower belly. So if we think about, you know, our cat or our cow, we're not in either of those. We're right and neutral in the middle. Despite this kind of forwards tilt of the spine, we're still neutral through the body. We want to feel like these lowest ribs are tucked in line with the body, so they're not sort of kicking out, creating this back bend. Really engage. You might feel the belly switch on once you think about those lowest ribs tucking in. And then let's head into our eagle pose. So we can bring our weight over to the right leg, taking that left leg up over the top. If you know your eagle options well, go through them in your own time. But we can have the toes touching down. We could have them lifting, or we could try for that double wrap, that wrap across around behind the opposite calf. When we're ready to add arms in, we can bring the arms out wide, bringing the right arm underneath the left. And first option, hands on opposite shoulders. We can bring the backs of the hands together, or again, we can double wrap, wrapping the palms all the way around towards each other. Any of those places are fine, as long as they feel good in the body. And then can we lift the shoulders, the elbows ever so slightly away from the floor, helping us to feel that stretch, that engagement across the upper back. Can we breathe smoothly, thinking about those lowest ribs again, thinking about that space in the lower back as the hips perhaps sit down a little here. And see if we can breathe smoothly and steadily from wherever we've ended up. Taking one more smooth, steady breath. Then using our next inhale to expand out as wide as we can. See if we can take that lifted leg, those arms out really, really wide. Then when we're ready, touching down, coming back to center. And then taking whatever you need here. You could take another standing spin or a few rolls of the shoulders. Alrighty, when you feel ready, we can come over to the other side, anchoring through the left knee this time. Oh, let's come into that chair pose first, actually. Even through the feet, let's bend the bottom back, finding that chair pose, feeling into the front and the back of the lower belly. We find length there, stepping into that left foot, bringing the right leg over. And any support you need, you could touch the toes down. You might feel comfortable letting them hover. You might feel like you've got that space to wrap all the way around. And then with the arms out wide, we can bring left arm under right this time. And finding that same option or a different one. There's no reason why it has to be exactly the same as the other side. Maybe hands to shoulders, maybe backs of the hands, maybe fronts of the hands together. And then can we think about length through the spine here? As the tailbone sits down a little, can we lift the elbows up, lengthening through the crown of the head? Can we breathe here? Finding perhaps a place to rest your gaze. One more smooth, steady breath. And then when you're ready, let's rise and release, expanding out as wide as we can. If we've got a bit of balance left in us, we can hover there and then touch down as we're ready. Oh, taking our time. just for a little bit of a roll, a little bit of a release. And then when you're ready, let's come down to a high kneeling position. Come down any way you like. Making our way down onto our knees. If you feel like your knees are a little sensitive, if you think they might like some extra padding, you can add that in anytime you need. We're going to come up into a high kneeling position. Now, you might have the toes tucked or you might have the tops of the feet flat. It doesn't really matter, but as you come into it, if it doesn't feel quite right through the ankles, through the feet, try the other way. And then if it works for you, we can bring the arms out at shoulder height with palms facing down, about shoulder width apart. And then with our inhale, we can tilt back, trying to stay long from the knees all the way to the shoulders. Exhale to drive ourselves back up tall. So inhale, we can lean back, even it might be a tiny 0.5 centimetre lean. Exhale to come back. Can you feel the front of the body engage? You might feel that support through the glutes and the hamstrings. If you can, notice what's happening in the torso. If it feels like a lot to keep your shoulders up, your arms up at shoulder height, I encourage you to lift them as you come back, and then exhale, we can bring them down beside the hips. So we can inhale to lean them back, bring the arms forwards. Exhale to bring them up. Check in with the knees. We want this to feel good for the body. If it feels like too much, see if you can make it smaller. Let's come in 2 more times with your breath. Beautiful work. As we come back up, let's bring ourselves down. And we have the option for rabbit pose here. Now, from rabbit pose, child's pose is a great place to head. So if you find it's not for you or you want to call time at any point, just head towards child's pose. For rabbit, we can tuck our toes to begin with at least, bringing the forehead down to the floor quite close to the knees. And then when it's in contact with the floor, we can gently roll onto the top of the head. We want the back of the neck to feel long, the chin will feel a little tucked. And we're not putting much pressure through the head at all here. We're just bringing the top of the head in contact. Again, if this doesn't feel great for you, settle the hips back, find your way to child's pose. If it's still feeling okay and you want to explore a little more, you could explore with bringing the hands interlaced behind the back and shooting the knuckles up towards the ceiling, giving us that stretch across the chest, that squeeze of the shoulder blades together. And you could do this from child's pose as well if you like. When you're in child's pose, you could interlace the fingers and engage the shoulders in the same way. Just taking 2 more breaths in rabbit pose if it's still working for you. And then perhaps bring the hands down, releasing. If you haven't already, just gently rolling back to child's pose, perhaps taking the knees a little wider, giving yourself that little bit of space, finding some support for the forehead this time. And for a few breaths here, bringing as much release through the upper back as we can, letting the shoulder blades, the upper back, just soften and release. Beautiful. When you're ready, let's gently come back up again. And we'll make our way over onto our backs. Finding your way down towards the floor. And then from here, let's bring both feet flat just to really anchor in through the back of the body. Feeling into the way it makes contact with the floor. When you're ready, we can hug the right knee in towards the chest. And just have a few goes of bringing it in and out. We can extend the arms out long and then squeeze the leg in towards the chest, feeling the way the leg kind of compresses into the body and releases a few times. And then maybe you want to slide that opposite leg away long, if that feels okay for you. You may change the sensation slightly. And then with that knee squeezing in towards the chest, we can come into our twist. So we can bend that left leg again, pressing into the left foot, just to shuffle the hips a tiny bit over to the right. Then lengthening the left leg out again, we can bring that right leg across the body. So a bit like that standing twist we had where we had the knee lifting. We've got the right leg coming across. You could definitely add support under there. Maybe that right arm reaches away in the opposite direction. You could turn the gaze towards the right fingertips. Can we breathe here? Breathing into any space, any stretch that we feel. Exhaling into that supportive earth underneath us, anchoring down here. And perhaps gently drawing that right arm back in. We can hug that knee back to the chest and roll back onto our backs. You might need to shuffle the hips a little back to center. And then let's swap those legs over, hugging the left knee in this time. You might start with the right knee bent and the foot flat, or you could slide the leg away. And taking a few goes of that gentle squeeze in towards the body and release. Feeling that compression against the body. And then when you feel ready, we can turn that into our twist, perhaps using that right leg to shuffle the hips a little over and lengthening away again. And then rolling with that knee across the body. And sometimes, depending on how the lower back's feeling, we can use that right hand underneath the left knee. You might press the palm up underneath the knee or make a fist and let the knee rest on the fist. If you're comfortably in your twist with the knee on the floor and you're looking for more sensation, you can bring that right hand around on top of the knee. And just that gentle weight of the hand sometimes brings the stretch a little further if you're looking for that extra sensation. If it's already feeling like enough, there's no need to add that hand on top. Can we breathe into this stretch? Inhale to feel and notice the sensation. Exhale to sink into the earth underneath us. Then when you're ready, can we slowly unravel ourselves as we arrive on our backs, taking any movements or adjustments that you need here, whether that's some rocks side to side. You might take a happy baby pose. You might prefer to squeeze the nose up towards the knees. Just take a few moments wherever you feel like you need to be. And as you feel ready, I invite you to make your way to your comfortable resting place. Tuning into what feels right for you. And depending on how long you've got to stay today, it might be worth taking a few more moments to set up if it means you're going to be super comfy and supported for your time in relaxation. As you arrive, I invite you to tune in with your breath, perhaps a big, deep breath in. Letting go with a sigh. You can repeat that a couple of times if you like, as you arrive in your own time. And for our time in stillness today, I invite you to bring your awareness just to the gentle in and out of your breath. With each breath in, I invite you to imagine this beautiful, vibrant light illuminating your spine from the top all the way down to the tailbone. And then with your exhale, this light slowly spreading from the spine out into the rest of your body. Inhale, we draw in this beautiful, bright, nourishing light. Exhale, allowing it to slowly filter out and spread into the rest of our body. This light brings with it a sense of space and ease. A sense of peace and comfort with ourselves as we are in this moment. From this central vital column in our body, from the length of our spine, feeding out into every other part of us, knowing that through our focus, through the torso today, we strengthen and support every part of our physical body, as well as ways to strengthen and support ourselves mentally and spiritually. So I invite you to stay right here for as long as you have today. Wonderful sharing this together space with you. From my heart to yours, I look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you.